Have you ever shattered someone's carefully crafted illusion so completely that their world crumbled under the weight of your unexpected brilliance? Not just winning, but methodically unraveling their pride, exposing the cracks they worked so hard to conceal until their confidence lay in fragments at their feet. You didn't just outmaneuver them, you dismantled the very foundation of their identity, leaving them staring into the void of their own doubt, questioning every move they once thought was untouchable. Let's talk about the one who believed they were untouchable, the one who strutted into your life with a swagger so grand it threatened to eclipse the sun. Their confidence wasn't just visible, it was a force, a gravity, pulling everyone into their orbit. They wielded charm like a finely honed weapon, disarming and beguiling, while a quiet storm of control churned just beneath their polished, pulling. And then they met you, the anomaly they never saw coming. From the very first interaction, they approached you with the same overconfidence, convinced you would fall seamlessly into the roles they always orchestrated. The admirer, the pawn, the easily controlled. They believed their charisma would weave its usual magic, that their charm would render you pliable, eager to please. But instead they collided with an unmovable force. You weren't dazzled or swayed. You saw through the veneer they'd so carefully constructed. Their attempts to control fell flat against your steady resolve, and for the first time, they found themselves out of their depth, faced with someone who refused to play their game. Gradually, it dawned on them. Something was off, something they couldn't quite grasp but couldn't ignore. The power they so effortlessly wielded, the control that had always been their unshakable foundation, now felt like sand slipping through their fingers. Doubt, an emotion they had long kept at bay, crept in like a shadow they couldn't escape. For the first time, they were forced to stare into a truth they had spent a lifetime avoiding. Their power was not invincible, and their dominance was no longer guaranteed. This realization hit them like a seismic shock, fracturing the carefully fortified walls of their ego and leaving them face to face with a vulnerability they had never dared to acknowledge. You didn't dismantle them with cruelty or schemes. It was your unwavering authenticity that became the mirror they couldn't avoid. Simply by being who you are, you illuminated the fractures they had spent years concealing, forcing them to confront the fragility of their carefully constructed identity. This wasn't just a change in how they acted, it was a fundamental shift in how they saw themselves. The once unshakable figure now found themselves piecing together a new version of their confidence, grappling with the profound realization that you had undone them without lifting a finger. If you've ever stood in your truth and watched illusions crumble in your wake, declare it. Power in my presence. Let the world and your higher self know you are an unstoppable force of nature. From the start, their motives were as sharp as glass. They craved control, pure and simple. Every smile, every word, every pause hung in the air like a thread in an intricate web of manipulation. They weren't merely engaging with you, they were conducting an elaborate performance, each move meticulously planned to disarm, confuse, and ultimately dominate. It wasn't about genuine connection or affection. It was a hunger for power, a need to see others move to the rhythm they dictated. They thrived on being the puppeteer, convinced they could bend anyone to their will. But in their overconfidence, they overlooked one thing: you were not like anyone else. While others fell victim to the allure of their charm, you stood apart, unshaken, your vision cutting through their facade like a blade. Their elaborate strategies, crafted to disorient and dominate, faltered in the face of your steadfast composure. Every move they made, designed to destabilize, was met with quiet confidence, as if you were steps ahead in a game they didn't even realize you were playing. You didn't just resist their control, you flipped the narrative entirely. The balance of power shifted, and suddenly, it was they who were tangled in their own web, overthinking, second-guessing, unraveling under the weight of their own miscalculation. The very tactics that once rendered others powerless now ensnared them in a trap of their own design. Each calculated move unraveled before them, as if your presence had turned the tables into a perfect reflection of their manipulations. It wasn't just their ego unraveling, It was the illusion of mastery they had built their identity upon. They found themselves caught in the intricate patterns they had woven, no longer the orchestrator, but the unwilling player in a game they could no longer control. Their own intentions became their undoing, leaving them tangled in the consequences of their schemes. What they once viewed as their greatest asset, their skill in manipulation, became the very force that unraveled them from the inside out. The confidence they wore like armor crumbled, leaving hesitation in its place, and the certainty they once wielded was replaced by an unfamiliar, disquieting vulnerability. For the first time, they were swept into a storm of emotions they had spent a lifetime evading: confusion, frustration, even a deep, gnawing shame. You became their paradox, the unpredictable constant they couldn't control, yet couldn't resist. Instead of stepping back to regain footing, they found themselves spiraling deeper, their emotions binding them tighter, their need to regain power only pulling them further into the chaos you unknowingly created. What began as a calculated pursuit of dominance spiraled into something far deeper, something they couldn't comprehend, an obsession they never anticipated. The one they sought to control now occupied their every thought, a presence they couldn't shake. The irony was as sharp as it was inescapable. The manipulator, once so assured of their power, found themselves at your mercy, their every strategy unraveled, their every step countered with effortless precision. The tables had turned entirely, and they were no longer the player but the pawn, caught in the pull of a force they neither understood nor could resist. What they thought was a simple game turned into the hardest lesson of their life, a lesson they never saw coming. This wasn't just another challenge, it was a revelation, a moment of clarity that broke through their carefully crafted illusion. And let's be real, this isn't for the faint-hearted or those lost in the monotony of the Matrix. If you're still here, it's because you're not just another NPC wandering aimlessly through life. You're someone who's ready to step beyond the ordinary, to join the ranks of the chosen, those who understand that real power isn't given, it's claimed. Here, there are no facades, no empty motivational speeches for the masses. This is where warriors gather, where the truly elite sharpen their minds and manifest their deepest potential. So, if you're ready to leave behind the mundane and embrace your true power, you know what to do. The door is closing, and there's no room for hesitation. Either step up or stay with the crowd and see how that works out for you. What sets you apart is the way you see beyond the surface, an uncanny intuition that cuts through the layers people carefully construct. Where they play their games, relying on scripts and rehearsed charm, you perceive the truth, clear and unfiltered. Your ability to read the room, to understand motivations, is sharper than any manipulation they could devise. What they thought was their greatest strength, seduction through charisma and control, has no effect on you. While others may be caught in the pull of their persona, you remain unshaken, observing from a place of quiet detachment. It's this rare and powerful calm that disarms them, as they realize they cannot provoke or sway you with their usual tricks. You don't need to react to understand. Your presence alone speaks louder than any game they could play. While they reveled in the chaos they created, you stood unwavering, untouched by their every attempt to provoke a response. It was a mystery to them, an enigma they couldn't unravel. Your unshakable calm, the level of self-control they had never encountered. This wasn't mere indifference, it was mastery. You saw through their games, but you chose not to participate in their rules. And then there was your energy, something intangible, yet undeniably powerful. It wasn't something they could name or even fully comprehend, but it radiated from you, making them feel its depth without understanding why. Your presence was a force they couldn't grasp, and it left them unsettled, craving control they couldn't achieve. It wasn't just confidence that set you apart, it was a quiet, undeniable power that radiated from deep within you. You carried yourself with a sense of inner knowing, an aura of divine energy that drew others in without effort. This wasn't the flashy, attention-seeking energy they were accustomed to wielding. Yours was rooted, grounded, and magnetic, a force that didn't require validation because it simply was, and that's where the real difference lay. They were used to people orbiting around them, hungry for approval, desperate for recognition. But you You needed none of it. Your independence, your ability to stand firm in your own truth, was something they rarely, if ever, encountered. An unshakable freedom that both captivated and unnerved them. It made you a puzzle they couldn't solve, and for someone who thrived on control, unpredictability was both a source of frustration and an irresistible fascination. As they struggled to hold on to their composure, their obsession with you grew, transforming you from a mere challenge into a full-blown enigma. Every interaction became a riddle. Every word you spoke a clue they couldn't quite piece together. The more they tried to dissect your every move, the more elusive you became. And soon, they found themselves replaying your conversations in their mind, unable to shake the magnetism of your presence. You weren't just a fleeting thought, you were a constant, a presence that lingered. Comment below, living rent-free, if your energy has ever left someone captivated and chasing answers, and make sure you subscribe to the Illumination Inner Order to keep receiving the spiritual upgrades that fuel this kind of power. What unfolded between you and this person wasn't just a personal clash. It was a lesson, one that unraveled the very fabric of their ego. At its core, ego thrives on illusion, on the need for control, superiority, and manipulation. But when faced with the raw authenticity of your presence, those illusions began to shatter. As Eckhart Tolle once said, the moment you become aware of the ego in you, it is no longer the ego, but just an old conditioned mind pattern. Ego can only exist in ignorance, and once awareness enters, ego begins to dissolve. For this person, their ego was a fortress, carefully constructed to guard their vulnerabilities and assert dominance over others. But in your presence, it was as if you shone a brilliant light on every flaw, every crack in that fortress, revealing the fragility beneath. Your presence didn't just challenge their ego, it tore it down piece by piece, exposing the brittle foundation it was built upon. It was a confrontation they never saw coming, and one they weren't equipped to handle. This lesson, as old as humanity itself, echoes throughout history, mythology, and psychology. Take the story of Icarus, for instance. In Greek mythology, Icarus ignored all warnings, soaring too close to the sun, driven by his own arrogance and overconfidence. His fall wasn't just a punishment, it was a consequence, a stark reminder of the dangers of letting ego blind us to reality. Like Icarus, this person believed they were untouchable, invincible, above the laws that govern us all. And, like Icarus, they were forced to confront the painful truth of their own limitations, realizing that no amount of arrogance could shield them from the consequences of their actions. Carl Jung once spoke of the ego as a barrier to true personal growth, an obstacle that must be dismantled for authentic transformation to occur. He believed that this process, though painful, was absolutely necessary for evolution. By merely standing firm in your authenticity, you became the catalyst for their potential transformation. You didn't need to directly confront their ego or attack it. Your truth alone created a force that their ego couldn't withstand. It was as if the very essence of who you were exposed the weakness of their facade, and in the face of your unshakable authenticity, their constructed self-image began to crumble, unable to coexist with the reality you embodied. What makes this lesson so powerful is its universal truth. Every individual, at some point in their life, must face their ego, and that confrontation is rarely a smooth or gentle one. For this person, encountering you was the spark that ignited this inevitable process. You weren't just another person passing through their life. You were a mirror, reflecting back the shadows they had long avoided. This isn't to say that the ego is inherently negative. It serves a vital purpose in helping us form our identity and providing structure. But when it becomes inflated, it warps reality, creating a barrier between us and our true selves, fostering disconnection and self-deception. Your presence forced them to confront the distortion within, and in that moment, the uncomfortable but necessary journey towards self-awareness began. Your presence didn't destroy them. It invited them to face themselves with a clarity they had never known, perhaps for the first time. It wasn't your power or dominance that made the impact. It was your unwavering authenticity, the kind that radiated with a divine energy, forcing them to confront the truths they had long avoided. The key wasn't in asserting control, but in simply standing firm in your truth, unshaken. Whether they choose to embrace this awakening or resist it is entirely up to them. But one thing is certain, the impact you've had on them is undeniable. At its core, this isn't just a story of you and them. It's a story about the transformative power of truth, the inevitability of growth, and the subtle yet profound role we all play in each other's journey towards self-realization. You were the wake-up call they never expected, a reminder they didn't know they needed, that no matter how high the ego rises, it can never outshine the radiant light of authenticity. For someone whose entire identity had been built around control, this loss of power was nothing short of earth-shattering. They were accustomed to orchestrating every outcome, predicting every move, and staying several steps ahead of others. But with you, nothing went according to their plan. Every move they made seemed clumsy, ineffective, a stark contrast to the calculated precision they were used to. It wasn't simply that they underestimated you, it was that they overestimated their own ability to dominate, failing to realize that true power doesn't lie in control, it lies in the authenticity that transcends it. The emotional fallout they experienced was unlike anything they had ever known. The person who once wielded confidence like a sharpened weapon now found themselves swallowed by an overwhelming sense of self-doubt. Their mind was a whirlwind of questions. How did I miscalculate? Why can't I stop thinking about them? They were forced to confront feelings they had long suppressed, emotions they hadn't even known existed. And with that came the regret, gnawing at their insides. They replayed every action, every word, every intention, and finally saw them for what they truly were: manipulative, hollow, and ultimately destructive. The person they thought they were, the persona they had crafted, began to unravel before their eyes, and the weight of that truth was almost unbearable. They regretted trying to play games with you, not only because they failed, but because they came to realize what they might have lost in the process. What had started as a pursuit for control had transformed into an aching desire for something real, something they had unwittingly sabotaged with their own arrogance. But even amid the storm of their emotions, a new feeling began to take root: admiration. They couldn't help but respect the strength you displayed, the way you stood unshaken in your truth. Your authenticity wasn't just disarming, it was revolutionary. For someone who had spent so long hiding behind facades, trying to maintain an image of invulnerability, your unwavering genuineness sparked something they had never known: a deep, unspoken respect for the very essence of who you were. Your refusal to wear a mask of any kind was both humbling and profoundly inspiring. It wasn't just a reflection on you, it became a mirror to themselves. They began to see the cracks in their carefully constructed armor, the insecurities they had spent years burying, desperately trying to conceal. They realized that their ego wasn't a symbol of strength, but a fragile shield protecting them from their deepest fears. Meeting you forced them to confront the very foundation of their identity, questioning everything they once believed to be true about themselves. This process, though painful, was a necessary one. It wasn't simply about losing to you, it was about watching the illusions they had built around their self-image crumble. In many ways, this was their ego's death, a moment of reckoning, brutal yet liberating, that opened the door to the kind of growth they had never imagined possible. They were left standing at a crossroads, faced with a choice: cling to the familiar comfort of their old ways, or embrace the transformation you had unknowingly ignited within them. Whether or not they chose to act on the realizations that had been thrust upon them was up to them, but one thing was certain: they would never forget you. You had become a turning point in their story, an undeniable catalyst that showed them what true power really looked like. It wasn't rooted in manipulation or control, but in the raw authenticity of standing firm in one's truth. Though they were still grappling with the chaos of their emotions, they now understood the profound impact of encountering someone who couldn't be swayed, someone whose very presence reflected the truth so powerfully that it forced everything around them to shift. Now, they stand at a critical crossroads, their old methods of manipulation and control having crumbled before them. For the first time, They are faced with a decision they can no longer avoid. Do they attempt to make amends, confronting the faults they once stubbornly refused to see, acknowledging the damage their actions have caused? Or do they retreat, nursing their wounded pride, and try to rebuild the illusion of superiority in a new place, hoping to reclaim what they've lost? The weight of their choice presses heavily upon them, for this moment will determine not just the course of their actions, but the true nature of the person they are becoming. One thing is certain: you've left an indelible mark on them, and walking away without some form of closure is no longer an option they can ignore. They find themselves trapped in contemplation, weighing their next move carefully. The idea of reaching out to you is both terrifying and necessary. Apologies, the kind that come from the heart, don't come easily to someone who has spent so long shielding their pride. But now, pride feels hollow compared to the weight of the emotions they're grappling with. If they do reach out, it won't be with their usual tactics or manipulative charm. It will be raw, vulnerable. They'll likely stumble over their words, trying to convey the depth of their regret. For them, this isn't just about seeking forgiveness. It's about being seen for who they truly are, without the mask they've spent years hiding behind. They no longer wish to play the role of the confident manipulator, the one who controlled every situation with calculated ease. Instead, they crave authenticity, the very quality they once sought to exploit in you. They want to show you a version of themselves they've kept hidden, a side they're only just beginning to understand. Whether they will succeed in shedding the layers of their past self is uncertain, but the desire to connect with you in a genuine way burns brighter than anything they've felt before. Yet, in this newfound vulnerability, you hold all the power. The choice is yours, whether to welcome their transformation or stand firm in the truth of your own. The balance of power has permanently shifted, and you hold the reins now. No longer are you subject to their whims or manipulations. The terms of engagement are dictated by your terms alone. You've established boundaries that can't be crossed, whether they fully understand them or not, and those boundaries are as steadfast as the truth you stand in. The decision is yours. Whether you choose to open the door to them or keep it firmly closed, your peace remains undisturbed by their actions. What they fail to realize is that this experience will follow them, lingering in their thoughts, shaping their future choices. Whether or not they seek redemption, whether they apologize or not, your essence has already imprinted on them. This lesson is far from over for them. It will haunt them, urging growth they may not yet be ready to embrace. What you've shown them isn't something they can easily shake off, no matter how long it takes them to understand it. The truth you've revealed goes beyond the surface level of actions and reactions. It's a profound shift in perspective that challenges everything they once believed. They've learned, whether consciously or not, that manipulation and bravado can never match the quiet strength of authenticity and emotional intelligence. You didn't win because you outsmarted them. You won because you refused to play their game at all. Now the question rests with you. Do you allow them a chance to redeem themselves, to see if their words hold any weight? Or do you walk away, knowing that by simply standing firm in your truth, you've already given them everything they needed to transform? Whatever decision you make, one thing is certain: you've altered their course in ways they'll never fully comprehend, and it's a change that will echo throughout their future. You've left an imprint on their soul, one that can never be erased. They'll never see the world the same way again because of you. The next time they attempt to manipulate or control, your presence will echo in their mind, forcing them to reconsider their every move. They'll remember what it feels like to lose to someone who didn't even try to compete, and the sting of that defeat will linger far longer than any victory they've ever won. Perhaps, in time, they'll come to thank you, not for the pain you caused, but for the growth it inspired within them. Because in the end, the true power you gave them wasn't in your resistance. It was in your unwavering authenticity. You were the storm they never saw coming, the force that tore through their carefully constructed world and left them facing the truth they could no longer deny. You carry an energy unlike any other, one that doesn't seek validation or applause, but demands respect through sheer presence. Just by existing in their orbit, you unraveled the illusions they had so meticulously built around themselves, forcing them to confront the shadows they had long hidden. But this story isn't just about their transformation, it's about the quiet power you hold. It's a power that transcends charm, intellect, or forceful presence. It's rooted in the unshakable authenticity of your being, a truth so deep it ripples through the very fabric of those around you. You don't just reveal what others lack, you reflect their greatest fears and their greatest potential, urging them to let go of their egos and embrace the profound vulnerability of being truly real. Stand unwavering in that power, for you are a force that reveals what others are too afraid to face. You don't just shift perspectives, you dismantle old patterns, inviting people to see themselves in ways they never thought possible. Your presence is an awakening, a catalyst for growth that ripples far beyond a single encounter. While not every interaction will leave someone altered, those that do are never forgotten. They become milestones in their journey, moments of reckoning. If this resonates with you, let it be the confirmation of your strength and the undeniable impact you have. Your authenticity is the spark that ignites transformation, and your ability to hold space for others' evolution is a gift that shifts worlds.